Hello, and welcome to Exposed News Outlet, where we shed light on topics that matter the most. I'm your host, Andrea. Today, we're exploring Republican tyranny and fascist town hall disasters in Republican districts. As we navigate the complexities of our world, it's essential to stay informed and engaged. By subscribing to our channel, enabling notifications, and sharing our content, you're supporting our mission to provide thought-provoking insights and inspire positive change. Thank you for being part of our community. And without further ado, let's get to the news. America, world, it's time to acknowledge the painful truth. Millions of Americans, and others as well, were deceived by Trump's empty promises. They weren't all driven by hate or extremism. Many were ordinary folks who believed Trump would bring about positive change. I'm sorry, but they thought he'd lower prices on day one and improve their lives, including groceries, that beautiful word, and egg prices, etc. They thought he'd improve their lives and put America first. But it was all a ruse. Watch this clip.
Jobs, because to me the most important jobs, I want jobs. And we have costs are way down. Groceries, they have a term grocery. It's an old term, but it means basically what you're buying, food. It's a pretty accurate term, but it's an old-fashioned sound. But groceries are down, costs are down, eggs are down. They were, first week they were hitting me with eggs were up 200%, and now they're down to a number that is amazing. We're down 97, 98% from where they were. And everybody, they said, you won't have eggs for Easter. Well, we had everybody had eggs for Easter at a very reasonable price. At the White House, we had our little Easter egg roll, and we had hundreds of thousands of eggs purchased. They said, you have to go out and buy plastic eggs. That didn't work out.
Trump's words were nothing more than hot air designed to manipulate and deceive. He denied the existence of Project 2025, only to enact its policies on day one, with now over more than half of the 922-page book Mandate for Leadership. He's already enacted at least 450 halfway through it. The people who trusted him were lied to, and now they're paying the price, as well as the rest of us, unfortunately. In this moment of crisis, it's tempting to turn against each other, but we can't afford to indulge in fighting or finger pointing. Instead, we must recognize that there are still many decent, hardworking Americans who were duped by Trump's propaganda. They're not beyond redemption. They're our friends, family, and neighbors who deserve our compassion and understanding. And pause, I just want to make it clear that I'm not talking about the cultists, the extremists, although maybe they too could, educate themselves and find a better calling. But I'm talking about the average people that were just overall duped. Maybe they watch Fox News or Newsmax or whatever. It's time to put aside our differences and unite against a common enemy. The MAGA agenda that's destroying our democracy. We must demand accountability, transparency, and justice. We need to take a stand together and call for a new election, or at the very least, a thorough investigation into fraud that's been perpetuated against the American people. This isn't just about politics. It's about our shared humanity. We're at a crossroads, and the path we choose will determine the future of our nation. Will we succumb to division and hatred, or will we rise up and demand for a better tomorrow? The choice is ours, and the time to act is now. Republican congressmen have faced significant backlash at town halls across the country. Many have been booed off the stage, while others have refused to hold town halls altogether. In Arizona, for instance, Republican lawmakers were met with anger and frustration at a town hall organized by Democratic attorneys general. The audience lashed out at the Trump administration's federal cuts, which they claimed were harming veterans and farmers, and they were. Similarly, in other parts of the country, Republican congressmen have faced hostile crowds and booing at town halls. This has led some to advise against holding in-person town halls, citing disruptions and hostility from the audience. Watch this clip.
President Trump successfully used tariffs to rewrite. The only way this is going to work, folks, is if I get the opportunity to answer the question.
And when we first did one of these seminars, Tom Homan, then acting director of ICE, said that he was going to threaten to refer me to DOJ because I'm using my free speech rights in order to advise people of their constitutionally guaranteed protections. And he may want to do it again today. And to that I say, come for me. You're going to have to come for me. Do I look like I care? Because the way that we guarantee in this moment, when people say, how do we protect against everything that's going on? How do we make sure that what can we do to prevent this erosion, all this stuff that's happening? We do it by exercising and using our constitutional rights. Our rights are use it or lose it. So we need to use it and we need to challenge them. So don't let them intimidate you into thinking that you're doing something wrong by telling people what their actual legal constitutional rights are. There's nothing wrong about it and there's nothing illegal about it. And if they want to make it illegal, they can come take me. That's how I feel about it.
It was a jammed-packed gym at Clackamas Community College in Oregon City, where tensions were high, some shouting their concerns.
Well, I think we would all like to have some more concrete, effective actions that we could take as individuals.
Oregon Democratic Senator Ron Wyden and Representative Janelle Bynum answering to a frustrated crowd.
What can we actually do to stop this chaos?
There's so much chaos. It's hard to start with just one item.
From the economy to education and the firing of federal workers, most concerns revolving around President Trump's administration.
I'm wondering what you have done to be able to talk to the other side, to certainly Republican friends that you've known for years.
Wyden saying he has been reaching out to Republican colleagues but refused to name them.
Because if I name them, the whole MAGA world is going to descend on them.
The town hall was held in a purple district where Bynum barely won by only 2.5 points, or just under 10,000 votes. Among the crowd Sunday were mostly older folks. Trump supporter Shelby Wallman was among the handful of people under 30.
I think a lot of younger people are afraid to talk about politics because we've kind of created a culture where we're not supposed to talk about it. We're supposed to kind of be divided. But at the end of the day, we all live here and we all need to be respectful of one another and we should all come together.
You mentioned Republicans are not doing town halls. It's as if they don't need to because they are owning it on social media and other platforms to speak to the youth. So do you guys need to basically shift your focus? Because look at the crowd here.
We should always be nimble and we should always be pushing the envelope. The town hall is just one method of meeting people where they are. But there are other ways to do it.
And I should mention, this was a jammed-packed crowd. I mean, so many people were actually turned away as they were trying to enter. Now, Senator Wyden is planning to meet with fired federal workers tomorrow. At the Live Desk, I'm Victor Park.
Fear has a way of being contagious. And we are witnessing that, no doubt. But I say this also, my dear friends, courage is also contagious. Courage is also contagious. When one person, when a few stand with the courage, that is the courage exhibited by the leaders in this room every day, to stand, to have the courage to say, I feel fear. The courage to say what is happening is wrong. The courage to say that there is a way that we must chart to get through this. Understanding our power in the democracy we still have if we hold on to it. Courage is contagious. And I also know this. This is a moment that really does highlight also the power of kindness, the power of sisterhood, the power of self-care. We can't go out there and do battle if we don't take care of ourselves and each other. Please take care of yourselves, be blessed, and I'll see you out there. I'm not going anywhere.
The backlash against Republican congressmen is largely due to the Trump administration's policies, including cuts to federal jobs and spending. Many voters are also upset about the administration's attempts to slash funding for safety net programs like Medicaid and Social Security. Not to mention the Department of Education. I mean, I could keep going on and on and on. Some Republican lawmakers have responded to the backlash by refusing to hold town halls or by hosting staged events that are tightly controlled. However, this has only fueled further anger and frustration among voters who feel that their voices are not being heard. Overall, the town hall backlash against Republican congressmen and women reflects a broader dissatisfaction with the Trump administration's policies and the Republican Party's unpopular priorities for the corporate and billionaire elitist interests. Watch this clip.
To demand the immediate resignation of Pete Hegseth, Michael Waltz, and the rest of the group chat.
No, I will not demand their resignation.
Is actually related to all of the immigrants that are being rounded up and deported. Are they entitled to due process? Or are we?
A lot of these people, what President Trump did the last time was he tried. If you seek asylum, wait in the other country, not getting here in the country. So
Welcome back. Postal workers around the nation rallied today to protest against the possible privatization or restructuring of the United States Postal Service. This comes after President Trump suggested last month that the agency could merge with the U.S. Commerce Department. The National Association of Letter Carriers hosted many of the rallies, saying that consequences of privatizing or restructuring the USPS include jeopardizing the jobs of millions of people, reducing services to homes and businesses in rural communities, and raising shipping costs and inflation for both businesses and consumers.
House Judiciary Committee right now, you're not going to believe this. I'm stunned that I have to tell you this. Republicans just voted, every single one of them, to allow Donald Trump to deport deport U.S. citizens. Not like deport unlawful, violent immigrants. No. They just voted in our committee to allow Donald Trump to deport U.S. citizens. That's where this is going. They just voted to allow that. I've never thought I would see this before. I never thought it would come to this, but that's where we are right now. And so just on the other side of these doors is the hearing that I'm in right now. I'm going to get back in a second because we're still voting on other matters, but it's not shocking because this is always where it was going to go, but that's a dictatorship. That's a dictatorship. It's a fucking dictatorship when you allow a president to deport your own constituents. And learn the names of every Republican on the House Judiciary Committee because they just did that. They just voted to allow Donald Trump to deport American citizens. I mean, it's one of the most shocking things I've seen. I think my Democratic colleagues were stunned that they would want to give him so much power. But that's where it's going. It's not going to be a completed dictatorship, though, and I want to tell you why. He has the ambitions of being a dictator. For it to be a completed dictatorship, he needs you to not show up to the town square. He needs the press to not independently cover him, and he needs the courts to not hold him accountable. He should have a check by Congress. That's gone. These guys are not doing it. It's gone. But right now, the press is independently covering him. Courts continue to hold him accountable, and you keep going to the town square. So that's the sand in the gears of a dictatorship, and we gotta amp it up. We have to amp it up. Again, I just want to tell you why I invited you in here. House Judiciary Committee right now in Congress, Republicans just voted to allow Donald Trump to deport American citizens. This is the same week that we learned that the president deported a 4-year-old American citizen with cancer. And this is where they're taking us. But we're not helpless. We're not helpless at all. You are awakened. You are going to the town squares. We have small victories that will bring us big victories. We're going to cut our time in hell in half by changing the majority in Congress and putting a check in place. I'm going to get back into this hearing, but I wanted to tell you as soon as I sat in that room and saw that vote, Republicans on the Judiciary Committee just voted for Donald Trump to deport American citizens. Fuck that. We're not letting that happen.
Republicans have been called out for spreading baseless claims that Democrats are paying people to protest or speak out against them, as if that's a thing or necessary. Come on now. This tactic is often used to discredit and undermine the legitimacy of oppositional voices. For instance, Mr. Trump has tweeted about paid protesters and professional anarchists. Similarly, Republican lawmakers like Representative Jason Chaffetz have claimed that protesters at their town halls are being paid to disrupt the events. However, there's no credible evidence of this whatsoever to support these claims. In fact, fact checkers have repeatedly debunked these accusations, pointing out that the sheer scale of spontaneity of protests make it unlikely that they're being orchestrated by paid operatives. Moreover, many protesters have come forward to share their personal stories and motivations for speaking out, further undermining the paid protester narrative. It's worth noting that this tactic is not new. Authoritarian regimes and politicians have long used similar strategies to silence dissent and undermine opposition movements. By accusing protesters of being paid, Republicans aim to shift the focus away from the actual issues being protested and onto the supposed motivations of the protesters themselves. Watch this clip.
The videos you saw of the town halls were for paid protesters in many of those places. These are Democrats who went to the events early and filled up the seats. If the videos had panned outside the building...
You can't argue they were all paid protesters, though, Mr. Speaker.
Many of them were. I don't know.
What's wrong with y'all? What's wrong with y'all? We don't need to send paid protesters into your town hall meetings. The American people are with us all across the country. People are rising up to push back against the assault on the economy, the assault on hardworking families, the assault on our democracy, and the assault on Medicaid. We don't need paid protesters, bro. The American people are with us.
I was hauled up by the Nazis. And for no other reason, I was picked up and separated from my family, who was exterminated in Auschwitz. And I am a survivor of Auschwitz and Dachau. I spent 5.5 years in concentration camp. I spent 5.5 years in concentration camp for one reason and one reason only. Because we picked on people, and you as the sheriff, who we elected as sheriff of this county. We did not elect you as sheriff of Washington, D.C. It's about time you serve the people here. And when this gentleman stands up there and he says he doesn't go after any people, he should read today's beat. Because in today's beat, the Supreme Court Justice of State of California objected to ICE coming in and taking people away from the courts. Don't tell me that this is a lie. You stand up here, Mr. Jones, don't forget, history is not on your side.
That these cuts are wrong, and two, that these cuts are unpopular. Unfortunately, they might actually care more about the fact that they're unpopular than the fact that they're wrong. Since they're both, this is an opportunity to get their attention. We're all here for this town hall. I can't help but notice that I'm not even elected official or running for anything. I'm here. I can't help but notice a lot of people who are elected officials aren't. There's a reason for that, right? They don't want to have to explain this stuff.
Authoritarian regimes and politicians have long used similar strategies to silence dissent and undermine opposition movements. Ultimately, the paid protester myth is a transparent attempt to discredit and intimidate those who dare to speak out against the Republican policies. But the masses can see right through this tactic, and it's unlikely to succeed in silencing the growing chorus of oppositional voices. The current state of affairs in the U.S. is alarming, with right-wing politicians, the Trump administration, Pam Bondi, and the Republican congressmen engaging in unconstitutional actions, policies, and illegal activities. These actions are pushing the country towards a constitutional crisis. Unconstitutional actions and policies. The Trump administration's executive orders on immigration, such as the Reinstatement of Alien Enemies Act, removals are facing legal challenges. The administration's attempts to expand the use of expedited removal, which allows for quick deportation without a hearing, are being met with resistance, even called out from the Supreme Court, who said that they have to have due process. The targeting of sanctuary jurisdictions and the threat to penalize individuals and organizations that help immigrant communities are also causing concern. These are constitutional rights. Republican congressmen's actions. Many Republican congressmen are not holding town halls, as I mentioned before, indicating that they are not interested in listening to their constituents' concerns. Those who do hold town halls are often using them as opportunities to push propaganda and indoctrination, rather than engaging in meaningful dialogue. The reliance on dark money and the influence of billionaires are corrupting the political process and undermining democracy. Constitutional crisis. The accumulation of these actions and policies is pushing the country towards its constitutional crisis. The erosion of democratic norms, the undermining of institutions, and the disregard for the rule of law are all contributing to this crisis. It is essential that Americans take a stand against these actions and demand accountability from their elected officials. Representative Hageman's town hall was a disaster, with her cheering herself on amidst public booing. But what's even more alarming is her response to a constituent's question about protecting transgender and non-binary people. Instead of offering reassurance or a commitment to constitutional rights, she claimed ignorance in a condescending and sarcastic tone. Watch this clip of Jonathan Capehart on The Last Word.
This is how Republican Harriet Hageman of Wyoming began her town hall just a few hours ago.
The opportunity to do town halls, because it lets me come here, give you an update on what I'm doing back in Washington, D.C., and then I'm going to give you an opportunity to ask me questions. Before we get there, however, I get it that there are people here who dislike me, but there are also people here who want to hear what I have to say. And if you have so little respect for our process and for what we are in this country, then I would ask you to leave.
But they didn't leave. Voters in red states like Congresswoman Hageman's are frustrated and using that frustration to confront their Republican lawmakers. And in Wyoming, where Liz Cheney was seen as too liberal to keep her seat, voters are booing Elon Musk.
I voted in favor of the continuing resolution, or CR, which extends funding through the fiscal year until September 30th. It keeps the lights on for President Trump and DOJ to continue their work.
Congresswoman Hageman's town hall was held tonight in Laramie, where more than 25 years ago, two men targeted gay college student Matthew Shepard. They tortured him, tied him to a fence, and left him for dead. The horrific story and the effort to confront the deadly bigotry was made into an award-winning play and film, The Laramie Project. It is the reason millions of people know the town of Laramie. And here is how Congresswoman Hageman in Laramie responded to a question about trans and non-binary people.
This person would like to know how I am going to help protect the rights of trans and non-binary people. I don't even know what that means.
Joining us now, Democratic Congresswoman Andrea Salinas of Oregon. Congresswoman, thank you for being here. You held an in-person town hall yesterday. What concerns did your constituents raise?
Thank you, Jonathan. My constituents are outraged right now. They're outraged. They're scared. They are really concerned about things like Medicaid, Social Security, Medicare going away. I represent a really working class district here in the Willamette Valley of Oregon. These are people who work hard every single day, people who are farmers, farm workers, people who are trying to raise their kids, trying to make ends meet, not being able to afford food because of the sky high prices of eggs and just everyday products. And we also have a lot of manufacturing here in this district. So it's a very working class district, and they're outraged right now. They're so angry that Donald Trump, our president, would hand over the keys to an unelected, unconfirmed Elon Musk, who is a billionaire who wants to take away these really critical programs and critical healthcare.
What would you say to your Republican colleagues who've been avoiding town halls?
Well, the town hall I held last night was in a very red part of my district. I did not even win this district. And I got cheers every time I spoke out and basically said, all the decisions I am making are based on what I'm hearing. I'm hearing from my growers who are losing out on USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture loan access, on small business access. Wineries are worried about the tariffs that they're seeing. So I would tell Republicans to stand up, show up, and then vote for their constituents. But they need to be heard first. And Republicans need to listen to them because they're going to be in a world of hurt in a couple of years.
Congresswoman, are any of the Trump voters having buyer's remorse, you think?
I actually think they are. As I mentioned, I went to a town hall and we had, a few hundred people at this town hall. And for the most part, I heard cheers. And I did not hear the same thing that Congresswoman Hagerman heard at her town hall in Laramie. And I know there were folks who definitely voted for Trump. And I said that. And I said, I do believe that people who voted for Trump were lied to. They were sold a bag of goods. It was not honest. He talked about some of the same things I talked about during the campaign cycle. He talked about lowering costs, bringing down the cost of everyday items. That is not happening when we know chips manufacturing may not continue here in the United States the way Congress had intended. We know that, again, these tariff wars that are going on are only going to increase those prices. And we produce a lot of them right here in my district and here in Oregon. And so I think people are starting to realize and wake up. Farmers and growers across the United States who want a strong farm bill, want those price supports, want to pass down their farm to the next generation. They're worried. They're just as worried as people who are, in the manufacturing sectors. And so, yeah, they feel lied to. I do think there's remorse. I think we need to give them the space to say that, too.
Congressman, speaking of tariffs, Donald Trump's tariffs threats on wine from Europe is expected to make wine in Oregon more expensive. I heard you say you're in Willamette, which has great wine, by the way, I will say. Axios interviewed the founder of Ribbon Ridge Winery in Newberg, Oregon, and he said, quote, "Wine shouldn't be upon an international push and shove trade competition. It should represent a celebratory, sustainable product that brings us together at the table." Harry Peterson Nedry, the founder of Ribbon Ridge Winery in Newberg, told Axios this damage is not only to winery producers, but consumers and the broader network of businesses such as restaurants, retailers, and distributors, he said. Can you talk briefly about the impact tariffs, specifically tariffs, will have on your district?
It will crush a community like the Willamette Valley. I've been telling folks, I heard the day that Trump declared that he was putting 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico. I was getting ready to board my flight out to Washington, D.C. from Oregon. And my phone started blowing up. It was several of my wineries. They were so worried. And they said, look, Andrea, 50% of our exported wine goes to Canada. We're getting phone calls right now from Canadians basically telling us we're taking product off the shelf. We are canceling contracts. We are going to be retaliatory and make sure that you hurt as well. And knowing that when 50% of the wine that is produced in Oregon goes to Canada, that is clearly going to hurt. And as you mentioned, and as Ribbon Ridge Winery mentioned, it's not going to be just the wineries themselves. It's the entire supply chain. It's the ecosystem. It is these small communities that rely on these businesses, on the work, and all of the other supply chains that support these businesses. This is a community here in the Willamette Valley that is going to be crushed by this.
Congresswoman Andrea Salinas of Oregon, thank you very much for coming to The Last Word.
This is particularly shameful, given the town's history. Having been the site of Matthew Shepard's tragic murder, you'd expect a representative to be more empathetic and informed, especially when it comes to marginalized communities. Hageman's actions are part of a larger pattern of disregard for transgender and non-binary rights. Many states lack explicit legal protections for these individuals, leaving them vulnerable to discrimination in areas like employment, housing, and healthcare, to name a few. The Human Rights Campaign, HRC, has been advocating for the Equality Act, which would provide a consistent and explicit anti-discrimination protections across key areas of life. It's time to hold representatives like Hageman accountable for their actions and demand better for our communities. They work for us. The recent deployment of subsonic weapons at protests globally is alarming. And as the growing protests rise in numbers around the globe, so have mistreatments against them. It's important to stay peaceful and be aware of your surroundings. And Trump's history of violating the right to protest is indeed dark. The use of such weapons is a clear example of excessive force and intimidation tactics. It's also concerning that the Trump administration has been targeting pro-Palestinian protesters, including students like Mahmoud Khalil, who was arrested and faces deportation for his involvement in protests. And not to mention, they whisked him away down to Louisiana, where he's facing trial, and the judge is just not even giving him his rights or due process, and very unfair. Of course, they're going to appeal it, and hopefully it gets raised up, but we must demand his return and justice. His wife is pregnant. It's just wrong, and faces deportation for his involvement in peaceful protests. These actions are not only a violation of human rights, but also undermine the fundamental right to free speech and assembly. In contrast, the stark difference between the two administrations' approaches to protest and free speech is striking. The Biden administration's policies focused on upholding constitutional rights and promoting social justice. The stark difference between the two administrations' approaches to protest and free speech is striking. According to recent reports on MSNBC, Russia has been linked to a series of attacks targeting international air cargo shipments, including DHL planes. These incidents have raised concerns about the safety and security of global air transportation, as if it wasn't in question already with current clowns and tragic accidents that's been occurring, including that tragic accident of that helicopter rotor that flew off the other day. My condolences, by the way. The global protest tracker by the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace highlights the growing trend of protests worldwide, with over 800 significant anti-government protests erupting since 2017. This surge in protests underscores the need for governments to respect and protect the right to peaceful assembly and free speech. The April protests went over very well with no arrests, and another protest is set. There have also been unconfirmed reports of Trump officials weighing out the pros and cons of whether or not the Trump administration will unconstitutionally declare the Insurrection Act and usher in possibly martial law, literally arresting voices of opposition without due process, much like they've been testing out with the immigrants. And I do want to stress, although these might just be rumors, it's better to be safe than sorry. This is just crazy, and there's no way that he should be able to get away with any of this. I mean, it's beyond belief that they would just throw away the country like that. In a bizarre stunt that aimed to promote a tough stance against immigration and basically anyone that Trump and his fascist regime see as a threat. Anyone that reports the truth and calls this lawless, corrupt administration out. This surge in protests underscores the need for governments to respect and protect the right to peaceful assembly and free speech. I am currently doing deeper research on these accusations that haven't been confirmed yet, although all signs are pointing to this possibility being true. And all signs are pointing to this possibly being true, and it's too dangerous to not speak about or bring up, especially if we can prevent it. This ridiculous and unconstitutional attack on our democracy and freedom. Call to action. Americans must come together to demand the expulsion of the unconstitutional Trump administration and all active participants in Congress and the Republican Senate. The recent 50-51 hands-off protests on April 5th, as I mentioned before, went over very well. Hundreds of thousands of protesters took to the streets, if not millions across the world, to reject the fascist and unconstitutional attacks we are currently living in. These are very dark times. However, we will not be silenced or intimidated. Hundreds of thousands of people must take to the streets to protest these actions and demand a return to normal democratic values and the rule of law. It's time for Americans to stand up against tyranny and fight for the future of their country. And as we conclude today's discussion, remember that knowledge is power. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Let's empower each other to create positive change. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like this video, and share our content on your platforms to help support our mission of promoting fact-based information and addressing disinformation and propaganda. I want to thank you for watching this video to the end. Let me know your thoughts down below. What do you think about all this craziness? Did you go protest? Are you gonna protest? Let me know. And if you watched all the way to the end, be sure to drop a peace sign down below. 2 fingers. The peace sign with the 2 fingers. Thank you again for watching, and as always, be kind to yourselves and be kind to others. Thank you. Independent truth-telling isn't easy. especially as a transgender journalist. I'm dedicated to bringing you unbiased reports, but I need your help. Support my GoFundMe fundraiser to upgrade my equipment, software, and resources, and every donation fuels my mission to amplify marginalized voices. Let's shine a light on truth together. I will link my fundraiser link in the description box below. Thank you.